We're live now.
You are live.
You are live with the Kip Capley Show.
Hold on.
Oh, are you? Maybe. Yes? No?
You are.
We are now live, I hope. No? Breaker. One time. Doggett has nothing.
Are you sure it wasn't over here?
I have nothing.
Chris has nothing.
It should be going
You
through
should
there.
hear my sweet voice. Anybody.
Well, we're supposed to be live.
We're live.
Welcome
You're
to the
only
Kip
gonna
Capley
hear
Show.
Welcome to the Kip Capley
Congressman
Show.
Dejalay.
Okay.
There.
All right. Welcome to the Kip Capley Show. As always, I am joined with my friend, the man, the myth, the legend, Lawrence Sutton, and the Giles County Rattlesnake, Chris Morris. And to his right, my left, we have a very special guest today, another Giles County native, Representative Clay Doggett from the 70th District in the State House of Tennessee. And also joining us via Zoom, we have our illustrious Congressman. Can you hear me, Congressman?
I can.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, you came in loud and clear.
Congressman Dejalay. We got you loud and clear there, sir. Folks, we got a great show lined up for you today, Congressman. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time this evening. And guys, how we doing? How's everybody doing?
Doing good.
Doing great. Well, the first thing right out of the gate, we need to let people know this is our first time to do this Zoom live like this.
Yes.
So we're working out the bugs.
That's right.
And shout out to Striker.
Shout out to Striker Steakhouse, always for sponsoring the show. We certainly appreciate them. If you've had something good to eat lately, it was probably from Strikers. So go out and get you something to eat. Pick up something from your family, or from your family, our family at Strikers. Go get you something to eat. So we'll just get right into it.
Hey, I got a little something right in front of us right out of the gate, and I hope people can see this. We got the Doggett Capley House Bill 1911 anti-seatbelt bill that we're wanting y'all to put up.
Well,
Can
with
y'all
Doggett,
handle that?
Yeah, with Doggett being the senior member of the House, I'll definitely defer to him on that for sure, and I'll co-sponsor it. But yeah, we'll let Doggett carry that one for sure. Yeah, so let's get into it. First off, Congressman, Merry Christmas. We appreciate you again. And we're just very thankful that you come on with us.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We've been trying to do this now for a couple of months. Schedule's not worked out very well. Kind of had a lot going on in Washington, so glad we finally make it happen.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Well, I think that's it's understandable. Y'all are kind of busy up there, so we get it for sure. But Chris, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, Congressman Dejalay, I greatly appreciate it. Like he said, we've been working on this for 2 months, and things have fell in and out. And of course, we're glad to have you. And one of the things we want to talk to right out of the gate is NDAA, the bill that was passed. And a lot of people don't understand acronyms, National Defense Authorization Act. Kick us off on that, Congressman Dejalay.
Yeah, that was a tough one. We passed a really good bill out of the House. It's a bill that you do every year. Deadline for filing requests for it's the end of February, so we'll be right back into it again. Usually we get it passed out of the House about April, and the Senate's supposed to act as usual. They were slow this year, and also as usual, Chuck Schumer and the guys on the other side of the hill took out a lot of good provisions we had in the bill. I've been on the committee since 2017, and we battle social issues almost every year. The red flag laws and the draft orders. We had a number of controversial social issues there again this year. Most conservatives, including myself, didn't like several of the things that got pulled out. There's still provisions in there that deal with sex change operations or gender historical service that absolutely have no business being in a defense bill as a physician. I can tell you, if you haven't figured out what gender you are by the time you join the military, it's not the taxpayer's problem to take care of that. I can't imagine why the Democrats in the Senate would have left that in there and give us a big middle finger. But so, as always, we have things that we managed to get taken out this year. There was a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion, wokeism type things that we battled to take out. And at the end product, when you send it to the Senate and you're supposed to be in conference, I was a conference, but we really didn't have a conference. The clock was running out on us, which happens way too often in Washington. There's a lot of save the dates that are standing every year, whether it's the annual budget or a 5-year farm bill or the SPIES reauthorization authorization, which I'm sure we'll get into during the hour as well.
Oh, yeah.
So, there's really no excuse for leadership to not do a better job with the calendar, but with our troubles that we had in the speakers race or getting our speaker ejected and having to start over and try to find a new one, it kind of put us behind the 8 ball. So, yeah, the NDAA, I'm not happy with a lot of things in there. I am happy with several things in there, and we can get into those too.
Congressman, when first time I think that the NDAA came to my attention was in 2012, and I believe you actually voted against it in 2012 because it had some language where the Obama administration were actually going after people, the American citizens even, through the military, giving military police powers, and also having people that could be arrested and never charged and kept. Do you see that as something that we could ever make that go away, or is that just in law now?
Again, this is done every year, so we can look to see if that's something that we can battle on this year. A couple of things that we were able, of course, there's a 5.2% pay raise for the troops, which that's good. There's always a pay raise, a record pay raise. One of the big things that we work for is a lot of the promotions that happen in the military now are based on the DEI criteria, wokeism criteria. And so we're able to have a provision where promotions are merit-based again, as they should be, instead of checking some diversity box. So I that was a big win for us. We got rid of critical race theory classrooms. We were able to get some COVID restitutions, not as many as we should have. But, so every year we get good things put in the House, and then there's always a compromise when it comes out. But this bill was particularly troubling because of the travel funding for abortion that was left in there, the gender reassignment, the drag shows. I don't know how pervasive that is. It's stupid that they'd even be in there. It's funny, back in the 70s and 80s, you didn't really have drag shows. The football players may dress up as girls, and it was all in fun. But it all seems to have a different meaning now, and with the LGBTQ movement and whatnot. So I don't know. The drag shows are a big problem. It was interesting. I talked to several soldiers, including my son, who graduated the Naval Academy. He's down at Pensacola at flight school. He went Marines, and during the Army-Navy game, I called down there and asked a bunch of them. There were 15 or 20, and I read the pros and cons of the NDAA and asked them what their honest opinion was. And it was part of the reason I voted for it. They said that our main concern is getting our pay, having good equipment, and making sure you all don't get us killed in some meaningless war. And they also went on to say that the social issues, even though as civilians, they care about those as active duty people, it doesn't affect them on a day-to-day basis as much as we think it does. It bothers us as conservatives, drives us crazy, and gives us something to fight about. But certainly some of those things need to come out, and we'll be right after it again here in just a couple months, trying to get those corrected.
Hey, Congressman, this is Chris. I've got a question that I want to talk to you about. I know there were 20 that held out on approving Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. And one of the biggest things of the holdout was, and everybody agreed, that we would go to single subject bills and vote on things. But now we're violating our own rules that we set forth to get Kevin McCarthy elected to the House. How come we're not using single subject bills? I'd like for you to answer or expand on that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. If we had single subject bills, the NDA wouldn't have a lot of us in there, and they certainly wouldn't have been able to attach that 4-month FISA extension to it. It seems like every December there's some must-pass bill, and they put some poison pill on it. This year, thankfully, it was just a 4-month extension. We have 4 months to get it right, and I want to talk about that some more later. But
yeah, I do too.
The deal back in January when we went through 15 votes to get McCarthy, there were a lot of deals cut. I've never seen the actual list of what he promised or what he said he would do. But when the 8 guys decided to oust him, and I think that was, personally, I think it was Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy, some type of internal feud, and a few people followed him in kicking him out. And Kevin was far from perfect, but having a third-string quarterback in there right now trying to negotiate for us is probably not the best situation to be in. And I think that's part of the reason we didn't get all we should have here in this final bill. Mike Johnson's a good guy. I like him. But he's inexperienced, and that's not his fault. But we put ourselves in that position. So when they got rid of Kevin McCarthy, all the side deals that these guys cut to elect him probably went away with him. In all honesty, I don't know if that was written into hard and fast rules, but it would sure be nice, if we could have the single subject legislation, make things a lot simpler. Inevitably, and that happens in the state house too. You get poison pills added onto an otherwise good bill, and you have to make a tough decision whether to vote for or against it. But like on the NDAA, being a member of HASC, I got all the funding I needed for Arnold Air Force Base. We got a bunch of funding for Redstone, Oak Ridge, Y-12, Fort Campbell. So all the things that I fought for were still in there. And I just, at the end of the day, felt like with the precarious situation we're in with the military recruiting issues, fires all around the world that we're looking at, and all the briefings that I do, it seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Both of our senators voted for it, but it was an imperfect bill. And I know a lot of conservatives are teed off, and it certainly would have been an easier no vote for me. But at the end of the day, my responsibility is to keep our military funded, functioning, and lethal. And so I went ahead and supported the bill that we wrote, and we'll try to perfect it here in a few months.
Well, one good thing that it had in there, of course, I agree with the 5.2% pay increase for all of our service members, and it did include civilian employees. I would like to know what the average pay a year is for a civilian employee. And, we don't need the civilian employees getting way ahead, because these people are protecting our national defense. They're on the front lines, our service members, and we need to give them more respect than we do a civilian employee. But the other thing that I like that was in the bill, it repealed the COVID-19 vaccine mandate for all service members, which should have never been in that bill to begin with.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. They vote up against us when we were trying to fight that a couple of years ago. And Secretary Austin and all the Biden administrating folks just wouldn't budge. We had the science behind us. Again, I approached COVID from a medical perspective, not a political. And I got banned or blocked on Facebook time and time again. Everything that I put on there, that they put the little censor or go to the CDC for true information, has proved to be true. And so it's kind of interesting looking back. They had no choice really but to let go of that because of the evidence that's come out in months and years that have followed.
Kip, you got a question for the congressman?
Yeah, Congressman, can you talk to us a little bit about, well, I actually kind of want to go back a little bit. I know we talked just a minute ago about the McCarthy leadership change and kind of all that now with Speaker Johnson. Can you kind of tell us a little bit more of the behind the scenes, kind of what that looks like with this new leadership? I know you said it kind of feels like you got a third string quarterback leading the charge. Yeah. And I've heard several different congressmen. Of course, I've talked to Congressman Ogles and Congressman Green about the situation as well. And they just kind of, I don't want to quote them, obviously, but they said that it felt like, maybe McCarthy had done some things that they didn't feel like were appropriate, but just the immediate change in leadership when we had so many things that were going that were important just kind of was a disservice to the American people. Do you kind of feel the same way or what?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that Kevin McCarthy should still be there. I've known Kevin for, 13 years, and he's always been pretty approachable. He goes out of his way to try to be fair and listen, more so than John Boehner ever did, more than Paul Ryan did. And so, and he had experience, which is very important in that job. And then, when Matt and the other 7 ousted him, of course, they went with 208 Democrats. Of course, the Democrats are going to do it to make us look like we're in chaos, which in a way we kind of were. And then, Jim Jordan, I would have loved to have. You think Steve Scalise would have been the heir apparent? Steve was having some health issues, and people thought, well, he's not going to be any different than Kevin McCarthy. And then, we went through the Jim Jordan, who would have been a super speaker, but he maybe was too conservative for some of the moderates in our party. And then they went to Tom Emmer. And, so we went down the list quite a ways. When I say third string, we had to find somebody that was kind of inert, that hadn't offended a lot of people, that was intelligent and pretty well spoken. And Mike fills that bill. But the bottom line is, you can't just train up to be speaker. It's kind of like Kamala Harris is vice president. God forbid she ever became president. What a disaster that'd be.
Sure.
Mike Johnson's a heck of a lot better than she is. But I do think that we shot ourselves in the foot, and Kevin would have been better at the negotiating table. But that being said, Kevin's leaving. We got rid of Santos. A guy from my class, Bill Johnson's retiring. So our 4-seat majority is now 1. We had a hard time passing legislation with a 4-seat majority. It's going to get even tougher. So I felt, because we didn't do as good in the midterms in the Senate or the House, I felt like all we could really do in the 118th is block Biden's agenda, message, and investigate. And it seems like we haven't done a great job of that.
Good response. That was a good answer. Thank you, Congressman. Yeah.
You got a question for the Congressman, Representative Doggett?
Yes, I'm just Clay, by the way, Chris.
Okay. Clay.
And I'm just Scott too, by the way.
You got to understand this inside humor, okay?
Yeah.
I've known Clay since he was knee-high to a pup,
But yes, Congressman, thank you. And, you had mentioned something earlier, and Chris and I had talked about this over the phone earlier today. It's really, it makes your job very difficult, and the American people don't necessarily understand a lot of things the way it works. But in these bills like this NDAA, there's all kinds of stuff that gets thrown into it. And you talked about the filing deadline for that being in February. In Tennessee, we've been very fortunate because we have in our codes, and the way we operate is it's kind of limited to one subject. So a bill like this you would never see something with all these things wrapped into it. It would just strictly be for national defense. And I wish, and I don't know, and maybe you can speak to it. It may be something that, I don't know if it can be done through a rule change in the House or how that would work up there. Maybe it would require a rule change in the House and the Senate. But, a lot of people get confused. They think that the state of Tennessee is just like it is up in Washington when it comes time for bills, and that all these little extra things that are totally off topic, have nothing to do with the substance that you're addressing, but they get thrown in. Is that something that could be done through rule change, or how could that be changed in Washington?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of what makes the swamp is, again, we have must-pass legislation every year. And as time winds down, people start panicking. And I don't know how long, it's gone on long before I got there. And it's just amazing some of the things that are non-germane that get thrown onto a bill. I would continue to fight for that. We will. I don't know if it'll happen. It's kind of, there's been such a shift in the way we govern. If you notice, there's not a lot of legislating. In the state of Tennessee, you guys get a lot of work done in a short period of time. In Washington, most things are done by executive order. That started back with Obama's pen in his phone. Trump did a lot of executive orders. He opened the Keystone Pipeline. Biden comes in, he shuts down the Keystone Pipeline, and back and forth it goes on energy policy and climate policy and all that. So whoever's in the White House seems to wield a lot more power, and the legislative branch, doesn't get a lot done because the government's so divided. And we're functioning as a two-party system, Republican and Democrats. But if you look inside our parties, we have the moderate side in the Republican conference. We have the conservatives, and then we have the far-right conservatives. There's half a dozen, 10 people in the Freedom Caucus, which I'm a member of now, that have come in the last few years, and they can't say yes to anything. An example of that would be, we had a CR. No one likes continuing resolutions, including me. I'd never voted for one, but back in October, before McCarthy was ousted, we had a 45-day CR that had border security, a 30% cut in domestic spending, and a debt commission to deal with balancing the budget. I wouldn't even call that a CR. That's like a Republican dream. And still, we had 21 Republicans vote against that. So that's what we've been running into this year. We can get good legislation, but we can't come together as a team. Now, on the Democratic side, they've got the squad that fights them. Nancy Pelosi managed to rein them in, and they could usually all come together for almost any vote. when they were in the majority for the 4 years prior to this year. The Republicans can't seem to do that. So again, it's like we're a two-party system, but it's almost like there's four parties in Washington, and the tail's wagging the dog on both sides of the conference, and that's why it's so frustrating getting anything done.
Why do you think the legislation is allowing these executive orders, Scott, and not doing what you guys are supposed to do?
Well, that's something that I think needs to be looked at. The judiciary,
Amen.
there's supposed to be three branches of government,
Yes,
but
sir.
executive seems to have more power. Judiciary seems to have a lot of power. The legislative branch, and I think it's just because of the dysfunction that we can't pass anything out of the House the Senate will take, or vice versa. Now, if we had control of all three chambers like we did under Trump, we got the tax cuts done, but we didn't fix the Obamacare. And so again, there's factions within our own party that keep it from happening. So in the Senate, you've got to almost have a supermajority or 60 seats to get things done. That almost never happens. It's probably not going to happen. Even if we had a really good cycle, we might pick up 5 or 6 seats. And in the House, you got to have 20, 30 seat majority in order to pass legislation. In the state of Tennessee, we're a red state. If there was more people across the country that thought like we do, I think the country would be in pretty good shape. But the way we vote in Tennessee is not the way that they vote in Oregon or California and New York. And I think that just the country is so divided right now that we can't come to consensus. And maybe we need to, if we had single subject bills, there's probably things we could work on that we can all agree on. I find that there's Democrats that I talk to all the time, House Armed Services, Ag Committee, just in general. I would say 80% of the House of Representatives wants to get things done, but those factions on either side are blocking everything. So I think that's the problem. And then the president seems to have no choice in order to get anything done but to do executive orders, which is not the way it's supposed to happen.
Well, Scott, we realize the president don't know whether A, Jesus was crucified, or B, killed by the Indians. So we actually understand that he's just a puppet. One thing you did hit my hot button is we need these executive orders. They started, Clinton did some executive orders, and then it picked up steam big time in the Obama administration.
Yeah.
I feel like executive orders are unconstitutional. We need to start following our U.S. Constitution, and this would resolve a lot of the problems that we're having in Washington.
Yeah, and a lot of the bureaucracy and regulation that's bogging us down in business in so many different areas, whether it's energy or agriculture, comes through rulemaking out of the various departments too. So you got not only executive orders, but then you have departmental rulemaking that we're having to deal with too, and it's stifling business. And on climate, we just passed a bill trying to create a more fair environment when it comes to electric vehicles. That's something that this administration is trying to cram down people's throats. I don't have a problem with electric vehicles. It wouldn't work for me here in rural Tennessee. Wife and I drive about 45,000 miles a year, and we'd be plugged in all the time, sitting at Cracker Barrel trying to, wait to go to our next stop. But the fact that all the car dealers that have come up to visit me said the dead inventory on their lots are electric vehicle, and for the last 2-3 years, it's only represented about 2% of the sales. But try to find a TV commercial for automobiles anymore that isn't centered around electric vehicles. So between wind, solar, and all the different climate initiatives, people just aren't buying it. Everyone wants a clean environment and a safe planet, but you can't make this happen overnight. And they're killing us economically. Our peer adversaries don't care about this stuff, and that's why you go into Walmart, 90% of what you buy came from China, and that's a whole other topic we could talk about.
Oh Lord, that'd be all night and all day.
Congressman, have you seen a big difference in this presidency as far as Joe Biden versus the Trump administration as far as the DOJ goes and how the departments act in committees?
Yeah, the DOJ, you didn't think that much about DOJ, FBI until Crossfire Hurricane, and when they realized that Trump could actually get elected. Mm-hmm. And so it seemed like that's when the real weaponization began. Whether it's James Comey, Peter Strzok, there's so many bad actors in there that started abusing the system. There was really strange things that went on with Hillary Clinton and her emails and destroying evidence, and the Hunter Biden laptop and this last thing, they suppressed that could have possibly changed the outcome of the election. But Then Christopher Wray came in and took over, and he was supposed to clean house, but no one was really held accountable. And I think that's a real problem for people that are supposed to look to the DOJ and the FBI as the highest law enforcement in the land. They love to say we don't have two systems of justice in this country. That's total crap. There absolutely is. And, hopefully that's something as we do this FISA reauthorization that we get some accountability provisions put in there where we can go back and clean up the people that admittedly cheated. Ray said that, we improperly asked for search warrants and they are admitting that they're guilty, but yet you don't see anyone held accountable, and it's hard for us to trust or have any respect for them when, they don't police their own.
Do you see that as a real possibility, Congressman? Do you think there'll be some actual, at least a real possibility for some, people to be held accountable?
That's the one thing, the FISA extension really hacked a lot of people off. And it was, Mike Rogers, the chairman of the Armed Service Committee, assured us that wasn't going to be put on there. And then somehow Mike Johnson gets rolled by it's 4 against 1. It's not really fair. Mitch McConnell's not helping us. So Mike Johnson was battling Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, the human sign guy. He can't talk without, I don't know what all he's doing. And then Joe Biden. So it's 4 against 1. And next thing we know, the FISA extension is going to be attached. Well, we immediately passed a FISA bill out of both Judiciary and the Intel Committee that were Republican bills, but they actually were, the Intel was nonpartisan. It passed with all Democrats, all Republicans. And in the House Judiciary, it was 35-2. I know one of the ones voting against was Eric Swalwell. Must have had something about Fang Fang or whatever they would do with Chinese spies. But so we had 2 great options that fixed a lot of the FISA provisions, put guardrails on it, even had some accountability. We were supposed to bring that to a vote, and that got tanked in Rules Committee by Republicans because they were concerned that the Intel version would get accepted. They were going to do they called it Queen of the Hill. I don't know why not King of the Hill or Person of the Hill in this day and age, but they didn't want it to come to the floor. I think they feared that the Intel version was weaker. All the guys I know on Intel are good guys that I trust. Most of them are on armed services. I may have a shot at getting on Intel here in the upcoming months. So I trust what they say, but I don't know if that bill's better than one that Jim Jordan and the Judiciary Committee came. The good news is that this extension was just 4 months. So I would rather take a 4-month extension and get this right.
Sure.
And so, the heartburn that everyone has over FISA, and I do too, it's got to be corrected because, they're spying on Americans inappropriately. They're improperly using the FISA courts. That has to be fixed. But, we'll be dealing with that over the next few months. And I do think, back to your original question, I'm giving you all really long-winded answers, but back to the original question, I think there is a real possibility. I hate that, we're already getting into the next year. It's an election year. And clearly, Biden's are trying to run out the clock on their investigation.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's truly an impeachable offense, what went on there. The Hunter Biden thing's real. The funneling of money's real. Trump got impeached for questioning Zelensky on the phone about the Biden scandal with Burisma, and he ends up getting impeached for it. I wouldn't be surprised if Biden ends up getting impeached by the very thing that Trump was trying to seek information for. So, yes, I think there's a good chance that we're going to move this ball down the field, and I think that we're definitely going to get some corrections on the FISA reauthorization. It's a 5-year deal. We got to get it right.
Clay, you got something you want to add to that?
No, I don't.
Well, Scott, I do want to bring up what you had talked about earlier, is we have all these 3-letter agencies that are making these rules, and where really the people I talk to, we look at our legislators to make the laws and not these 3-letter agencies making the laws. And I know for myself, and again, a lot of your constituents that I talk with, we're actually sick and tired of it. That we're seeing what we think is a legislative body being pushed around by these bureaucrats. And is there anything that your constituents can do to help with this? Because I'll just tell you, looking at it as we feel like we might can help Tennessee here, but a lot of us say that our U.S. government's too far gone to even deal with anymore.
Yeah, and that's $1 million question, and I don't know we can continue to be vocal. Shows like this are important, what you guys do, because it's honestly hard to get the conservative message out here in Tennessee. Super Talk out of Nashville does a good job. But most mainstream media, other than Fox and some of the newer News Nation and whatnot, won't even talk about what's going on with Biden. You turn on CNN and it's all about Trump and his indictments. They're not talking about what we're talking about on the Republican side. So, spreading the word and getting people fired up. The things like the economy, we can all feel that when you go to the grocery store. They can tell us everything's rosy, inflation's down, we have all these jobs. They can tell you that the border's closed, but you can see with your own eyes. Even CNN can't hide that.
Yep.
Because you go to the grocery store anywhere, you got people that aren't speaking English. I just was down in Scottsboro today, and there's no question there's people that are probably new arrivals here. And there's some things that I think next year, like the fact that it cost, I think, $11,000 more a year per average family than it did 2 years ago. They can say the economy's good, but you're feeling it at home. You can see your neighborhood changing and your town's changing with 7 or 8 million new immigrants in the country. So those are going to be hard to cover up. But for the most part, the things that we talk about, DOJ, FBI, the corruption, Biden's mental status, you don't hear a lot of that on mainstream media. It seems like it's about 90% controlled by state-run media or propaganda. It's like living, I'm guessing what it'd be like living in the Soviet Union in the 70s. We used to mock them for propaganda, and their citizens didn't know what the truth was because it's all kept from them. It kind of feels that way here now.
Well, I noticed that just seeing it, and you bring up the border, what we're having to deal with on the border, and we've talked about this numerous times on our show, is that our border is the least secure border in the world. We had Israel, who was supposed to have the most secure border, and we've seen what happened with Israel with Hamas. And the other thing that a lot of your constituents are looking at and they're seeing is, okay, we have this wide open border, and then we have our government trying to take away our ability to defend ourselves. The Second Amendment is being attacked every day from the Democratic Party. And I know a lot of people are about sick of it because we're not stupid. I mean, we can see what's happening with people pouring in on the border, and it's not just families coming in. It's not just people looking for asylum that's coming in.
Chinese nationalists.
You cannot tell me that terrorists have not come into this country through that southern border.
I can tell you they can. I mean, that's something.
Yeah.
I do a lot of classified briefings on HASC, and there's no question it's happening. And how the Biden administration and Secretary Mayorkas still has a job is bewildering, because we sit there and look at this every single day, and even the military guys that have been kind of pro-Biden are saying, border security is national security, and the gotaways are the ones you got to worry about. The people that come through seeking asylum, that doesn't make it any more right, in my opinion, because anyone knows that the game is you come in, say you're seeking asylum, they'll give you a $5,000 Visa card, a cell phone, a plane ticket to somewhere, then give you food, housing, put your kids in school. It costs about $80,000 a year for each one of these once they get integrated into our system. We got about 8 million of them. Wow. But the 1 to 2 or 3 million, who knows how many they are, gotaways, they're not even trying to go the asylum route. So you can guess that most of them have ulterior motives. Otherwise, they would have checked in and been able to tap into some of these freebies that the Biden administration is doling out. But I don't think people understand how much cost that is to America, to the taxpayers. And it's a slap into the face to the million immigrants that do it right. I saw Melania Trump was just welcoming the ones that were being naturalized. We let 1 million people in this country every year legally through natural channels. And how in the heck can you explain what's going on right now and continue to turn a blind eye and have Mayorkas and others tell you, oh, the border's secure, when clearly it's not? I mean, we go through TSA screenings at airports every day. They just open the gate for these people to come in the country, and you don't know anything about their background. We know people are dying of fentanyl all around us. More people die every year of fentanyl than died in the Vietnam War. And again, just radio silence from this administration. They've got to be purposely trying to destroy our country. I don't know what the answer is.
I say this all the time. The Biden administration cannot be this stupid by accident. I mean, this is not accident.
But the administration,
I mean,
I shouldn't say he's stupid. He just isn't cognitively there anymore, and he hasn't been for a while.
right, but I mean, he's not running the country. I mean, it's
No,
the
not at
people
all.
underneath him that
You
are.
know, the sad thing about this, Congressman, is, we're letting all these nuts across the border. And my last recollection about 2 weeks ago, there's been 21,000 Chinese nationalists that's
Yeah.
come across this border this year, and that's unfair. But we're taking care of these people. It's sickening when we don't even take care of our homeless vets.
I mean, I just heard
It's crying
$80,000. I just heard $80,000 that this is costing us. I mean, my family lives on probably half that. I don't know about anybody else, but I mean, I could live high on the hog for $80,000. I'm just going to tell you.
Yeah.
Better than the beer budget, right?
But you darn straight it is. I don't even drink beer. I don't drink, period.
Well, Lawrence touched on this just a second ago, and fortunately, Tyler Privet happened to be in the room with me with U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn when she last visited Giles County. And one of the things, we were talking about how to do this, how to do that, how to cut some of the national debt. And I told her I waited to the last. I saved the best for last. And I just said, if we would do away with all these three letter alphabet agencies, IRS, FBI, DOJ, Department of Energy, do away
Department
with
of Education.
Department of
There you go.
Education.
Yeah.
There's a big one right
That's
there.
another one.
If we would,
ATF, IRS, all of them.
yeah, if we would just simply do away with all this bureaucracy and put these people back in the workforce and get up off of living off the taxpayers and cut this spending, we could pay off our national debt. That's for sure.
Well, I know this, Scott. I don't want to come across you as combative, because I think the world of you and your voting record. I mean, I would say I agree with you 95, maybe even 99% of the things that you vote on. And I know you're only one guy, and I guess that's why we sit here and we see the things that are happening, and it's a helpless feeling. A lot of us are feeling, are helpless, that there's nothing that we can do. And so I guess my question is literally, what can us as constituents do to get more involved that can help you help us?
Yeah, we've got to put good candidates in different seats around the country. Tennessee is not really the problem. I think we've got a pretty good handle, and most everybody votes pretty conservatively. I think we have two great senators, and we have good representation. But in some of these, in the last election, you got to understand, even in the Republican Party, we want people to be conservative. But if you're going to win a seat in Portland or in New York, or even Don Bacon, who's from Omaha, Nebraska, you can't put up far right candidates in purple seats, and we did that in the last election, and we had some incumbents that got taken out by conservative candidates and then got their butts kicked in the general election, because these are districts that are D+2, R+2. Most of ours in Tennessee are R+20, and your race is the primary. But in these general elections, I think we had some bad candidates, certainly in the Senate. Herschel Walker's a good guy, but he probably wasn't Senate material. I don't think Dr. Oz was bad in Pennsylvania, and I don't know how the heck to this day I scratch my head that Fetterman got elected, who's about as bad as Biden.
Oh, Lord.
But at any rate, we need to make sure that we understand you can't have the majority without having more moderate Republicans. So you've got to accept that. But then once we get that team together, you gotta be willing to get to yes. And Reagan used to say 80% of the loaf is better than nothing, or someone who's 90% my friend isn't necessarily 10% my enemy. I think the Republican Party needs to learn a little more compromise, and that's something that's hard for me to say, because I don't ever want to compromise my conservative principles. But after what I've seen going on legislatively, we've got to change our strategy. So getting good candidates elected in different seats around the country would be helpful. We should have had the Senate. We should have had a larger margin in the House. So that's something that, if people in other states, we got to work on that. but it's really frustrating to, being part of the Freedom Caucus that was formed in 2015. I've seen it in some ways move too far to the right that we're not going to get anything done. It becomes almost obstructionist, and the goalposts move. And I think on this NDAA we could have gotten rid of some of those things that ticked us all off that remained in there, and I still think there'd be a couple dozen Republicans that wouldn't vote for it. And maybe it's because it spends too much money, which is fair. We spend an awful lot on defense, but yeah, I also think this is something that I thought about on NDA. And Chris, you and I talked about it through text messages anyway. We talked about all the things that were bad, and we didn't really focus on what was good. So as conservatives, we do dwell on things we didn't get instead of promote things we did. Where I think Democrats, they can pass a 90% crappy bill and they'll still declare victory, and the news outlets will too. So it's like they can do no wrong. So maybe in our messaging, we need to be more positive, even though I feel the same frustration you do too. And all you guys do, that we're sitting here doing it right, or we think we're doing it right, and yet we're spinning our wheels, or as my dad used to say, quit hitting your head against the wall and it's not hurting. But it's I don't know what it's going to take. It's almost like we're so focused on first world problems right now, whether it's wokeism, DEI, all the critical race theory. But one of these days, things are going to get real, whether it's a war with China. We're going to go broke because of our spending and our 34 trillion in debt. We're going to be paying, $1 trillion or more a year in interest, and all that's going to come home to roost. And when it hits the fan, and we're in some kind of a major conflict with China, then all those other things that we've been worrying about, fussing about, focusing on climate change, windmills in the ocean, solar panels, all that's going to go away, and we're going to worry about other things. And maybe that's what it's going to take to fix our country. You remember after 9/11, we came together for maybe a month. Alan Jackson wrote some good songs, and we all felt strong and patriotic. Well, it didn't last, but we get into something real where our military and soldiers are dying and it's affecting the homeland. A lot of these trivial problems we're going to focus on are going to go away. And I hate to say it, but I almost feel that's what it's going to take to reshape our government, reshape our country. And it's sad to have to think that way.
Well, and you're kind of saying the things that I feel, but I do want to point out this. I really believe when you talk about the wokeism, the homosexual agenda, I think it's come about and has gone as strong as it has because we've compromised. I think at some point we've got to draw a line in the sand, and we have to be biblically correct and not politically correct.
And I agree wholeheartedly. But Congressman, we've had a lot of good conversation. I know you hear from me quite a bit, but one of the things, I write down the positives as well. I know in the National Defense Act, it reversed Biden's dangerous cuts to our missile defense program, and we expanded our shipbuilding again. We're getting back, I think we're going to build, 12 new subs and things up in Virginia, and that's needed. And so, Biden tried to destroy everything, and I know the congressman that heads the Senate Arms Committee out of Alabama, Mike Butler, it's greatly going to help Huntsville, Alabama, Anniston, Alabama, and put these people back into the missile defense program that Biden cut. So, that's a great thing. But, there's a whole lot in this FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. A lot of people don't know what these acronyms stand for. But one of the things that, you guys, it left you guys and went back to the Senate. And y'all had removed the chief diversity officer from this budget. It was taken out, and then in the Senate it was put back in. It was rescinded. And y'all also dealt with these flags. When I was in Washington in March and April, and up there in the Cannon Building, and it slipped my mind there for a second, but up there visiting y'all, all these different flags, from the LGBTQ plus flag to Black Lives Matter, and all these flags flying outside and especially
American flag,
especially the squad. they were flying outside their offices and they pride themselves. There should be the American flag and the state they represent, and any other flag like a prisoner of war. That's the type flags we need flying in there. We got to get rid of all this sin that these idiots have brought into our house. They've turned the White House to the outhouse. You know, and we got to reverse
and that was
that.
something we did get in the NDA bill, that they cannot fly the LG or the rainbow flag or whatever it is, the alphabet flag. So we got rid of some of that stuff. But I know time's running a little short. I
got something
Clay
here.
And Kip there. I feel like I've done all the talking. I'm just going to see if there's anything you guys have coming up in the next few months that we can help. From a federal level, you do a good job. We'll probably just screw it up if we tried to get involved. But what can we expect to happen in the first few months of the new year?
Well, I want to say this. You know, Congressman, we're delighted that out of the top 5 state representatives, we've got 2 of them sitting right here in the room with us out of the top 5 of 99. So that's a shout out to them. And we always say that Southern Middle Tennessee has the most conservatism. But before our time slips away and give Clay and Kip the mic, I want to talk about the FBI coming into our great state and killing an American honorable discharged veteran in Chester County, Tennessee. We need help, and we don't need the FBI coming in here no knock and notifying no one, just come in here like they're the exalted ruler.
Yeah, and you'd mentioned that to me before, and I gave that to my military LA and my legislative director. I still haven't got a good answer for that on you. I don't know why that wasn't on my radar when you brought it up, but I haven't forgotten, and we'll try to get better information. But yeah, there's so much corruption in those agencies, and I really hope that we see some pretty significant improvements here before we reauthorize this, because that'll all go into some of this legislation that we're working on now.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Kip, you got anything you want to say? I've got some stuff, but go ahead.
You go ahead.
Well, Congressman, thank you. And, you know, last year, one of the big things that we tried to tackle was the issue, and you hit on it, with the border being open as it is, was fentanyl use. The number of deaths that we've seen across not only the country but our state. And so that's one of the things we addressed some of that last year by strengthening some penalties on possession and the sale of fentanyl. But we're looking at coming back and doing a little bit more this year to help aid in our quest that we had last year. But the biggest thing that we need help with, and you've already hit on it, is we've got to get our borders secure. We've got to get our borders under control, because that's where this stuff is coming from. And with Tennessee, you've got the I-40, I-65 corridor that runs through. It's a perfect place to not only transport drugs, but another issue that we're having that we're looking to address, continue to address, is human trafficking. You know, Tennessee is still in the top 5 in our country, unfortunately, for human trafficking. So those are some things that we're going to be running, but we always need help. And I know you're doing all you can up there, and very appreciative of your work, but a lot of this stuff is going to could be handled through an administration change. And so we've got election year coming up, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. I just, Lynn Davis, who some of you know, she's my rep up in Murfreesboro, but she said that she was over in Bedford County, and they were running into a lot of sex trafficking related to the immigration right there in Bedford County. So I'm sure it's all over the state. And of course, the fentanyl, the precursors are coming from China. That's not an accident. That's on purpose. And you know, Tennessee tends to do a great job, but I don't know how you stop that. So I hope that you have success there, because it's killing too many people. And if you haven't already, talk to the narcotic unit out of Nashville. They'll actually go out and buy drugs on the street, in the alleys, whatnot, and almost everything, even though they're told it's ecstasy or it's cocaine or whatever, almost everything they're getting has fentanyl in it. And now the fentanyl has ketamine in it, which, by the way, killed Matthew Perry. So, I mean, anyway, thanks, Clay. I know Kip had something he was going to add.
Congressman, we're just looking at some different things right now with these. You know, we've got these liberal DAs in Nashville and Memphis, and you know, from my standpoint on it, we can strengthen the penalties and we can do everything we can in our areas. But when you look at somewhere like Nashville, that, They don't have the police force to handle a city like Columbia, much less Nashville that's growing the way that it's growing. And then once these people get prosecuted, let me back up. Once these people get caught, they're really not being prosecuted for the crimes they're committing. It's just like Charlie Daniels said, some panty waist judge lets a drug dealer go, and you turn them back out on the street. So we're trying to look at some things where we can kind of hold these DAs accountable. And I know you're a very conservative individual. I have a lot of respect for you. And going down the road, we're definitely going to be having conversations as far as that goes, because our DAs are doing a disservice, I think, to the citizens of Tennessee. I mean, what's the point of catching somebody and taking them to jail and trying to hold them accountable if a liberal DA like Glenn Funk's not going to do anything about it?
The same thing, we wouldn't be stuck with Justin Jones right now if they had prosecuted him on these 13 different charges.
Yeah. So that's just another thing where I think it's a huge issue. It's a huge problem. I can't remember the exact number. We talked about it last week, maybe the week before, but it was like 60 individuals were caught stealing firearms out of vehicles in Nashville, and only 3 were prosecuted out of 60. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah. And sadly, Tennessee does better than most states. You ought to see Washington, D.C. right now. You can't walk 2 blocks from the Capitol without getting carjacked or tripping over somebody with a needle in his arm on the streets. And Tennessee's getting bad, too. We're better than a lot of states. But, gosh, what's happened to our country and crime, and you hit it right on the head, is that they're not holding people accountable. And, that's got to change. It's just gone rampant.
Amen.
Well, that's one reason Tennessee is as safe as it is, because we're still the patriot state of shooting stuff.
That's true.
And somebody comes and carjacks me, it's going to be a bad day for everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
They don't need a pine box for sure. Doggett.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing. I don't know how much time we got, but I'm sure it's running low. 4 minutes here, Meister Chris says. But Congressman, we had Mark Green as our congressman the last 10 years, and when I was elected, prior to Kip being elected, a lot of people call our Nashville office needing assistance with things, whether it be tent care or licensure or other things. But we get a lot of calls too about things like Social Security stuff that's handled on a federal level.
Yeah.
Excuse me. We always had a really good relationship working through Steve Allbrooks and ones like that in Mark Green's office. Then you come back, we've got Becky Moon and Amy Dennis. Let me just tell you, you've got some fantastic folks that work for you.
I agree with that.
That represent you out there in the field. They're extremely responsive. They're extremely helpful. And so now when we get those same kind of calls that we need assistance, our constituents need assistance on a federal level, we're able to get in touch. And I spoke with Becky just the other day. I guess it was Thursday or Friday. And so we're working on some things together. But I just wanted to let you know, I know sometimes you don't always hear the good stuff, but I wanted to brag on your people that represent you down here in the district that work with us. So thank you.
Yeah, Becky's
I appreciate
doing
that,
this.
and I'll pass that on to them. And that is one thing you can call the district office. We only have 2 now. We used to have one in Columbia and then one over in Cleveland. But after they thankfully drew Lawrence and Giles and Coffee back into my district, I had all 3 of those counties in my first term. But so Amy Dennis is in the Winchester office. You can access all those. Just go to desjardins.house.gov, and that'll have the representative closer to you, the phone numbers. But they do such great work on the Social Security, disability, veterans issues. We got a new a guy who is a veteran, Brian Morris. No relation, I guess, to Chris. He's outstanding. We just got him on board. And so I thank you for saying that, and I'm going to pass that along. But I hear case after case. I get the calls saying, thank you so much, Congressman. You got this done. You got this. And the credit goes to those people in the field that make me look good. And they're the ones that, do the work and get those cases filed. And I'm happy to share your compliment with them.
Absolutely. Congressman, you want to shout out your social media stuff, and you want to shout out your house thing one more time so people back home can get one more time for us?
The easiest thing, just go on the internet, desjardins.house.gov. If you can spell Desjardins, you can get the rest of it.
Yeah, you can Google that and spell it correctly. Hey, we want to get you back on we'd like to have you like once a quarter, since you are our U.S. Congressman now for this area. Glad to have you back. We worked with you before. we're down to the last 15 seconds.
Yep. Shout out to
Strikers.
Steakhouse, baby. Shout out to Strikers Steakhouse. Please go to Kip Capley for state representative on
And-
Facebook, votecapley.com. Doggett, what's your social stuff?
Clay Doggett.
Just Clay Doggett. Hell,
Clay.
that was easy to know.
The Clay Doggett.
The Clay Doggett.
Congressman.
The one and only. Thank you, Congressman.
You get him
Wish
on
you a
the party
Merry
line.
Christmas, Happy New Year, and glad to have you on.
Thank you,
you so
Congressman.
much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Do it
Scott.
again.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it?
I think so. Cool. Good
Man.
show, guys. That was awesome.
Phone fires up. Everybody's